Now, this portion of Lesson 408 is where I really want to put the main focus, because we go around sometimes misusing words that have been given to us by other people, whites, Arabs, whatever. And the one people we don't listen to is our own people when they teach us about our own words and our story. So I'm going to ask you all to block out what you've learned about the origin of the word Egypt, and I'm going to show you the fallacies in the way that we've been taught about this word Egypt, and I'm going to go ahead and correct it and show you the pure African origin of the word. So we look at it. The word Egypt, as we most know as people that label us Egyptologists and whatnot, we're taught that the word comes from Aegyptos, which is the Greek pronunciation of Het-ka-Ptah, which many think is the house of the soul of Ptah. That in itself, and many of our great scholars go around teaching this, and I'm not knocking them, but what I am saying is I'm challenging them, those who are still alive, by the way, I'm challenging them to do further research into what they're actually saying and what they're actually spreading around about the origin of these words. Because in order for Het-ka-Ptah to be correct, that means Het, Ka, and Ptah have to be the correct pronunciation of those syllables. And they are not. As we've seen, so-called Ptah in other lessons is not the actual pronunciation of that word. So then we're told that from Het-ka-Ptah, the Greeks used the word Aegyptikos or, Aegyptos, and that's where you get the word Egypt. So again, that's still giving the Greeks entirely too much credit in pronouncing our words. And I understand how many want to do that because, it's more familiar to us. And we see more words that are cognitive in that language, I think that's the word I'm looking for, versus what is in the languages we're trying to study. But we're going to go correct it. And I'm going to go ahead and say right now that the proper origin of that word is from Kipsigi. And I'll show you why. Now, first off, if we look at the Kipsigi, they have a sun deity as some would label. But there's a reverence and a principle of the sun named Asis, A-S-I-S. Asis, obviously, is Isis, as it's so-called. So when we look at Asis, another, which is a counterpart, the dualistic principle to Asis is Ungolo. Ungolo. And if you look all throughout our lands, you see Congolo, Dongolo. You see the origin of the word and the word used in many of our own talked in this place names. Now, together, Asis and Ungolo, once they are combined, they become Het-ka-Ptah, which means the pure white girl. So I'm not very familiar with Kipsigi language, but I do know one thing. The way it seems is that the suffix, which I'm looking at as lel or el, represents feminine. But then Het-ka-Ptah is obviously the ka-Ptah in the so-called Het-ka-Ptah for Egypt. But Het-ka-Ptah is the combined aspect, the principal creation of the sun. And when you're trying to describe the principal deity that they show reverence for, I don't like saying worship because that's another word in itself. The high priest, if we look at our text, the high priest is called the Boyot Abtumda. Boyot Abtumda. Now, what I'm trying to do is equate Boyot Abtumda to the so-called Pert M. Haru. Now, how would I do that? As far as the Tumda, I will admit I have not gotten that far just yet, but when I do, you will get it as I get it. But the Boyot Ab, I can easily explain. The B and the P in our languages, in languages throughout Asaze, the B and the P are interchangeable according to the plosiveness that is put upon the lips. Now, an example of this, as we've seen before in previous lessons, would be mpa and mbwa. And another example would be if you look at in Kilimangari, there's the one particular peak that the Shaga people call Kipu. Kipu. But when the white folks got a hold of it, they called it Kibo, Kibo, whereas our pronunciation was more in line with Kipoo. You understand? So the B and the P are synonymous in their pronunciation. Ab is the same in pronunciation as because the M and the B are also interchangeable, being that they are bilabial nasal when pronounced. So the pert M actually breaks down into boyot ab. Now, Tumda and Heru, I'm quite sure that there's a connection, but I want to make sure that it is the correct initiation and how to pronounce that initiation. And I will give a theory of it in a few, but I don't want to make it definitive yet because I haven't done that much research to go ahead with it. Now, the male, when you have a male nganga, or the male who is the man, the elder man, who is the one who holds the teachings and the sacred information and sciences, as some call the griots, these are called the penindet. And the female nganga is called Kepsogiot. Chebsogeyot. Kepsogiot. Now, if we look at how we pronounce our words today, a lot of times we, as being a rhythmic people, we drop letters in words and still make them sound more rhythmic. An example of that is instead of saying probably, which doesn't really roll off the tongue correctly for us, we say probably. You know, I'll probably go tomorrow. I'll probably do that tomorrow, or I'll probably do it tonight, whatever it is. It's harder for us to say, I will probably do that tomorrow. See, there's too much work going on there. So a lot of times we drop off letters like the P. And the reason why I say that is because I'm looking at a connection between Kepsogiot being the female nganga and also who many call Het-ka-Ptah. And I'm doing further research on that. So anybody want to take a grab or stab at it, work with me on it so we can get to the bottom of that. But as we know, in the power that she held in Chikoma, the power that she held and her status was always revered as probably the most powerful woman to ever rule during that time. So only a female of high reverence would be able to be called Kepsogiot, and only a female of high reverence would also be able to be called the so-called Het-ka-Ptah. So now, why do I bring the Kipsigi into the fold? Well, they actually migrated from the Upper Nile in Egypt, and they resettled in Kenya. So if you look at it, they actually came from Upper Egypt, and they went against the course of the Nile and resettled in Kenya. And if I'm not mistaken, it was because of war and things like that, how oftentimes we're moved and pushed out of our lands. But there's a very important reason why I'm saying that. It's because another people who are the same people, but we recognize as another people, unfortunately, who have the same origin are Dogon. The Dogon. They were pushed westward. When they say they came from the west, say that they came from the east and they went west, they're not talking about east of the Niger, and they're not talking about just Chad. They're talking about they came from Chikoma. And this is why they brought their high sciences, because they were practicing the high sciences then. But what happened is if you take notice, our people in Chikoma never migrated out over the Suez Canal. They never did, because our people were always in Chikoma. And the people that came through the Suez Canal from the east pushed our people out of Chikoma. So if you have the so-called Asians and all of these the Arabs and all these other people, the two main places they were coming in was in I think it's called the Sinai Peninsula and the Suez Canal. They came through the bottom of Yemen into like Ethiopia or something like that, and they came in through the Suez through the north of Chikoma. So every time they came in, they pushed us either westward or south. Same thing that happened. When they pushed us out, not all of our people stayed together. So Dogon and Kipsigi are the same people who were pushed in two different directions. They were the same people in origin, just as Yoruba and Dogon were pushed west, Kipsigi was pushed south. So I say that because to those who understand the cosmological teachings of Dugong, they have a principle called Sigitolo. And they use that star, or they use that principle symbol as the creator. If we look at the word Kipsigi, cut off the KIP, we see the word Sigi, as in Sigitolo. Now, why is this important? Well, because if we look in some of the historical documents, and not only documents, but also the oral traditions in Burkina Faso, the Gom were said to be described as the Kibsi people, which is Kibsi. And Kibsi and Kipsi are the same in pronunciation because the B and P rule again. So again, how is it that a people who traveled so far westward carry the same name as the people who traveled southward if they were not the same people? Now, going back to Kipsigi, they believe that the human spirit is immortal and is reborn into children. Well, look at the cosmology of Bakuma, and that will explain itself in itself. Kipsigi also have sacrifices to Oyik, and these sacrifices are called koros. Koros, K-O-R-O-S. Koros sounds a lot like the so-called Horus, because of the guttural H and the K are synonymous. So with that being said, we see a direct relation between the cosmology of Kipsigi, the cosmology of Dogon, and the cosmology of Bakuma. If we take that even a step further, and it bothers me to see my people say this, but I understand, overstand, and understand that we're doing it out of ignorance, which is the lack of actual knowledge and awareness of the origin of the word. When we look at the word Egypt, many want to argue that it came from the word Geb or the word Copt for Egypt. Not the case. Coptic is Christian. That has nothing to do with us. Geb, you would have to say, is the actual pronunciation that Wallace Budge gave you. And as we know, Wallace Budge did not know our languages. Geb is not the pronunciation of the word. The pronunciation of Geb is actually Hlaba, which is Zulu, and I'll get that into another lesson. But it means the earth. So again, Egypt has nothing to do with Hlaba or so-called Geb or Copt. When Dogon were absorbed into the Mosi society, they were called the Nyonyose. Nyonyose. And what that means is descendants of the first one, or descendants of the first. And if you look at Nyonyose, that is the same as Nyunya, the rain. It's a feminine aspect representing water. And Yunya is actually the proper pronunciation of who you call Noon. Overstand, as we know, as the mother in one of the creation origins. They never want to tell you that we all were already calling ourselves these names. They want to tell you that our names came from mispronunciations of foreign people, such as Greeks and Arabs and other stuff. But if we actually look at our names that we've carried with us throughout time, we've always kept what we've called ourselves. We've always called ourselves African. We've always called ourselves Bantu-Kongo. We've always called ourselves the names that we knew ourselves by. So Dogon were either always known as Kipsi, Dogon, Nyonyose, or something of the sort. And Kipsigi always kept the name that they originally had when they were still part of Dogon. Put the words together again, Kipsigi Tolo. Kipsi plus Sigi plus Tolo. Same people. So now how does that translate into Egypt? Well, if we look at it, the S and the T are also synonymous because they are dental words. Dental plosive. T, S. See, they don't really sound the same. But if I explain this, it'll make more sense. If we look at the word north In the Latin-derived languages like Spanish, is pronounced norte. Norte, or Nort, comes from the word Norse. Norse is, as you know, the Scandinavian people from the North. So the word north, Nort, norte, comes from Norse. So the T and the S are synonymous in pronunciation. So Kip-si also translates to Kip-ti. So therefore, when we look at the G in Sigi or Kip-sigi, the G is the origin of the letter K. That's why you have Shaga or Ushaga and you have Ushaka. You understand? So now if we look at how that works, instead of saying Kip-si-gi, you say Kip-si-ki. Kip-si-ki. Now, what does that give you? Kip-tiki altogether. You cut off the end, which is the sigi, and you get equipped. And as we never taught our full cosmology and we never taught all of our knowledge and wisdom to foreigners, we also never taught what every portion and segment of our words meant, because they were not sacred to us. We were sacred to us. So many of us only taught them what we wanted to teach them. And look at the world that they created out of it. Good gracious. Out of the little bit we taught them, they created this. But what I'm trying to say is we held back more information than we taught them. So we didn't give them Kipsigi. We didn't give them Nyonyose. We didn't give them Kipsi. We gave them Kiptiki. And they used it and pronounced it the way that they could. And that's where you get Aegyptos. So my brothers, whether it be Seti or whether it be Tahuti, whoever it might be, my brothers who are teaching and who are great teachers in our languages and our people, even the books that are being written. Anybody writing books right now about the subject, do more research on what you're saying about this Aegyptos and Het-ka-Ptah, because that is not correct. Or Egyptica, however you want to pronounce it. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make that the end of this lesson 408, the dessert over the full course meal. And I really appreciate your listening and your viewing and your studying. And, you know, hopefully we can sit here and find some deeper meanings into some of the things that I wasn't able to find, such as the relation between Tumda and the so-called Heru. There was a tradition of the mask initiated into the Sigi ceremony, and it's called Olubura or Oluburu. Oluburu, if you look at it, Olu would be Ra. Ra is not really pronounced Ra in some, instances. The spelling of it is consonantal and is actually Olu. You look at Buru. Buru and Horu are the same because the H and the B are oftentimes interchanged. So in some languages, like I want to say in Kikongo, when I say Kiambote, Mbote, M-B-O-T-E, is also pronounced Kiamhote, M-H-O-T-E. So Oluburu, in my estimation, is the so-called Rahuru. And again, that is tradition of the mask. That's why you see so many animalistic figures in our drawings in our temples, because they represented actual Bakuma or Kipsigi Dugumo, who were wearing the mask according to whatever initiation rite that they were following in the ceremony. You understand? So that's even more information that we can look into. So work with me on this one. Let's see what we can come up with. And I look forward to your comments. Hamba kahle.